human beings being manipulated by it. Just be more satisfied and happy with life as a whole. Hello and welcome to Limitless AI Society. Today we're going to be talking about dopamine and how to actually reset your dopamine. I'm going to go over the basics of what dopamine is and actually why it's very hard in today's world because of all of the excess dopamine that we're receiving in our day-to-day activities. So to begin with, what is dopamine itself? Now, dopamine is a pleasure reward chemical in the brain that we get when we complete challenges, and it gives us motivation, and it's also something that when you achieve a goal, you will receive dopamine. Now, in today's day and age, dopamine that we receive is mostly manipulated by companies in a way to get you to buy more of their product and to actually be addicted to what they are selling. So, for instance, if you look at social media, which is a key example of dopamine being released and abused and human beings being manipulated by it. Now, everyone is addicted to social media. I don't care if you go on it once a week, like TikTok, for instance. If you're not posting and creating and using it for a business, you are simply chasing dopamine because there is no other reason to be on it. Now, how it works is what these social media companies have done is they've actually figured out the way our brains are wired from years and years and years and years and years ago when dopamine was used to basically fuel you in your day-to-day activities and to keep you in check with survival. If you look at TikTok and things like that, you're getting dopamine from the chase of seeing something new that you haven't seen before. And it's like when you refresh and it starts spinning at the top, that is basically simulating the same crank of a wheel. It's the adrenaline of the unknown. And every time you refresh or scroll, you're getting a dopamine hit. And these companies know this. This is why they're doing it. They're not doing it for any other reason other than to keep you on their app and keep their advertisers happy. Our brains are wired to look at information and constantly look for things in the unknown. If you go back to when we were cavemen, it was our job and our duty to spot things that may be a threat to us. So if we're on a hilltop and there's grass everywhere and we see like a bush shaking a little bit out of the usual, the dopamine will be released and we will be focusing exactly on that, and we are now chasing our survival instincts and we are rewarded for surviving. That is the whole point of the algorithm showing you completely pointless rubbish that is quite shocking. It's usually shocking stuff or desirable stuff. Anything that would trigger a human emotion is what people are going to watch and what people are going to fuel these machines by scrolling. And the whole thing is nonsense. So to start with a whole dopamine detox, there's a lot of different things you need to do, and but the very first thing you need to do right now is once this video is finished, is go and look at your social media apps and think, am I using this for business? Is this making me any money? No, delete it. I don't use any social media at all. In fact, I'm only on LinkedIn, which is for business, and I don't post anything on there at all, and I do not scroll. I certainly do not scroll. If I do scroll, it will be for about 10 seconds until I catch myself scrolling, and I will go, no, this is not what I'm doing. I've actually now got myself to a state where scrolling is incredibly boring to me, and the dopamine I get because of the tiny amounts of dopamine that I am receiving from pointless, mindless activities is so low that I really do just get bored of scrolling as a whole. So I'm only on LinkedIn and YouTube, and that is really YouTube again promotes me, promotes my brand, promotes my business, and I'm also helping my long-term goals and my mission. So I'm receiving dopamine by actually posting and succeeding and working towards something. I still look at YouTube here and there if I want to learn something, or if there's some interesting video, or maybe a bit of drama in the Tate's world. But other than that, I'm really not on YouTube. Um, the next thing you need to do when it comes to dopamine, of course, we're still understanding where dopamine is coming from. So you will have all these companies we're recognizing. So we've recognized now the social media aspect of it. There's nothing you can do apart from delete it, because no matter what you try and resist it, it's so hardwired into our human psychology from our adaptations as a whole, as a human race, from thousands and thousands of years. And the brain is so manipulated by these companies that you have no option. You cannot limit yourself. And if you say, oh, I'll just have a few, like an hour, spend an hour scrolling, you're just an addict. You're just as bad as a crackhead. Maybe you might not look as bad, but you are just as bad, because you're being controlled by it when you simply have the option to delete it. And it's going to do no benefit for you whatsoever apart from make you tired and waste your life. So we are now going to recognize in food. So take away fast food, McDonald's, all of this rubbish. What do? They manipulate you with salt, sugar, and fat. Because salt, sugar, and fat, when all three are combined, releases huge amounts of dopamine in the brain, which gets you addicted to the sensation of it. But it's actually even stronger than the social media addiction, food, obviously sugar and things, because it actually goes in your stomach, and the microbiomes in your gut start to grow for whichever foods you are eating. If you're eating a lot of junk food, they will grow. And what they do is they will send signals to your brain to tell you that they are hungry, but they'll make you think you are hungry, and you will then go and buy a cheeseburger because you have so many cheeseburger microbiome bacteria gut cells in your body that are going to be playing with your brain and constantly trying to be fed. Because if this bacteria does not eat, it does not survive. And every single organism in the entire universe's purpose is to survive. So they are in your body, they are infesting your brain, and they are completely sending wires to go and buy certain rubbish. Now, to completely detox from this, obviously, you have to stop eating it. Quite clear. But the thing that I think is probably quite refreshing to hear is it does get easier, and these cravings and these things are going to go the less you feed it. That is where the hope is. Because a lot of people, if you don't understand this side of things, if you don't have this knowledge, if you're not well equipped, you will not realize that it's actually going to get easier over time, and people will give up too soon. So if you are looking to change things, I would recommend intermittent fasting to start with, and also to eat your food in a specific order. Because again, the spike in your blood sugar when you have carbohydrates or any sort of form of glucose is what's going to cause more of an addiction, because when that spikes up, your dopamine goes up, and when your dopamine crashes, it crashes below the baseline. And this is the problem. Now, when it crashes below the baseline, your body wants to always go neutral. Your body's constantly trying to neutralize itself. So your brain is immediately going to go and rush for the first thing that gave you that dopamine hit to restore. And the problem is, you'll get the same sort of dopamine hit, which will be lower than the first one, and it will actually crash even lower than last time. And it's a never ever ending a never ending cycle. And when you implement intermittent fasting and you eat your food in the correct order, you will no longer get these spikes. So, how do you eat in the correct order? That is something that is very important to know. Now, before you eat any form of carbohydrate, you should always have vegetables first. And the reason you say this is not even just to be a health freak. This is because vegetables, when they're in your intestine, create a barrier that makes absorption of the carbohydrates and glucose much slower, which means your blood sugars will not spike. So you have your in a one meal, one plate, you have your vegetables first, then your protein and your fats, and then your carbohydrates. And this way, you will not be tempted to the dopamine spikes and crashes. Now, let's say you still have the gut bacteria that's still sending signals to your brain to try and stay alive, feeding you rubbish, lying, fake information. This is when you slowly, you can still eat the same things, you eat them in the right order, but you slowly reduce the amount of addicting combinations of salt, sugar, and fatty foods and takeaways. You slowly reduce them for the next few weeks and implement intermittent fasting. So, intermittent fasting is when you allow your body a window of hours to repair itself with absolutely nothing but either water or black coffee, and your chemicals, you get hungry because of a chemical. That is a fact, because when you are fasting, within 3 days of fasting, you are no longer hungry, which you would think you are hungry because you haven't eaten in 3 days. But no, the chemical stops producing. That chemical is constantly produced if you're constantly eating. And you've actually now set up if you eat regularly throughout the day, meals and snacks, you've actually told your brain that there is an endless amount of food. And when there's an endless amount of food, your brain doesn't know that we are in 2023. Your brain still thinks we're in the Stone Age, where once you find a meal, you're not going to be able to eat for 2 weeks after that. So when there is an abundance of, as soon as we eat, our brain produces this chemical to tell you to eat and eat and eat and eat, because it doesn't think it's going to eat for the next 2 weeks. Now, this is great for survival, not good in the modern age. So, when you're doing intermittent fasting, I would suggest every single day to have an hour of 12 to 16 hours of fasting period with a 4 hour window of eating. You still get the same amount of calories in. You eat your food from vegetables to fats and protein to carbohydrates, and then you go to bed, you wake up, you have your 12 or 16-hour fasted window, and now this hunger chemical in your blood is going to reduce massively. You're not going to feel so hungry, and you're not going to be controlled by sugar, by fats, by salt, and all in all, your dopamine detoxing is even more improved because you are now not chasing food for the addiction. You are simply fueling your body, and you're not being madly driven crazy with the thoughts of eating, and you're not daydreaming of all this lavish lovely food. Now, this doesn't mean to, if you do slip up, to beat yourself up. It's normal. I do it sometimes. I still eat rubbish food once a week, one meal once a week, and that's how I manage. That's how I cope, because you still have to smell the flowers sometimes. Still have to get up and smell the roses. But I'm not controlled by it. I control it. And if it does get to the point where I've been eating such basic healthy food for so long, I may just want to peek in that dopamine giving box again just to see what that rubbish food is all about. And I enjoy it 100 times more, and I'm actually left extremely satisfied. And the bacteria in my stomach hasn't grown to a point where it can control my next meal. I'm then back onto what I was doing, and I'll give it a week or two until I go down that slippery slope again. But we stay on top and we manage it. Now, the next thing you want to do with dopamine detoxing is you need to retrain where you're getting your dopamine from. So if you're not exercising, you need to get into exercise. Everyone should do it. It is not a chore. It's simply a way of life. It is way of living. Because when you exercise in the morning, as soon as you finish exercising, your body is going to try and heal itself from all that trauma. I jump in a cold shower, which releases 3 times more dopamine than resting dopamine, and it releases adrenaline. and all of these other chemicals that are really good. So I have my dopamine from my exercising, and then my dopamine from my cold shower, and that combination sets me satisfied enough throughout the day where I don't need to chase dopamine from anywhere else. So these are ways you need to start implementing the dopamine detox, and I would say a week in, you'll notice huge improvements. You'll be able to work for longer, because when you're working towards a goal, you're getting dopamine as you achieve little things here and there, because it's your brain telling you you're doing something right and it's keeping you alive. And if you have too much dopamine from all of these rubbish places, the places we are trying to get rid of and reduce, your brain's not gonna recognize achievement as much, and it's gonna be harder to work for longer. It's gonna be harder to go towards your goal, and you're gonna get burnt out very easily. So you replace it all with what I have just talked about, and you'll be able to work for much longer. You will feel so much more rewarded for your day-to-day wins, and you will just be more satisfied and happy with life as a whole. Now, I'll probably make another version of this and extend it a bit longer, but comment down below what you're going to do today to change, and I will see you in the next video.